It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, April 28th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that can't believe we got here. There's only one game left in the season.
Hooray.
We will talk about last night's game against the Jets and more coming up on the show.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Flyers Land. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. You can find my partner in crime here, Russ Cohen, on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You'll keep up to date on our episodes, Flyers news. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. In addition to last night's shutout at the hands of the Winnipeg Jets, we're going to talk about updated draft lottery odds, playoffs update, and then we have a prospect profile. Of course, it's Thursday. We're going to talk about Ryan Chesley, who is a very interesting prospect. Locked On Flyers is free and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you are listening. So subscribe. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So, Russ, I know obviously Flyers fandom is split in terms of wanting to lose out in terms of the draft lottery odds. We are going to talk all about those odds in the next segment, but I don't think getting shut out was exactly what people wanted either.
No, I mean, I just want to say it's very nice and refreshing that we showed up for work today because they didn't.
It was absolutely atrocious, I think, just from an effort perspective.
Oh,
And honestly, my hopes were a little bit high actually going into the game based on, what we talked about yesterday, the fact that they put Joel Farabee back on the wing where he's more comfortable.
which
Thought
only
that
took how many games? Wow.
exactly, exactly. And we had been talking about the kids line of, Cates and Frost and Tippett
hmm
getting opportunities and they did. They looked the best in this game, but unfortunately, it wasn't even close to being enough.
No, and you know, I always have to temper things because everybody wants to say, "Well, look, they got chances, and look, it got close." In the end, the problem with this team is they have to actually execute fully. Like the puck has to go in the net, and things could look great. You could be doing things that are good on the ice, and we could applaud that. But if the puck doesn't go in the net, it's going to be a problem next year too. And honestly, if I were the GM, I would save this game. And when I went and did my exit interviews, I would say to some of my veterans, is this really the kind of effort I can count on you for next year? Like, why was it so bad in this game? And I really would hold their feet to the fire because I'd want them to think over the summer, hey, you're getting paid $6-7 million from us, but you can't just show up.
Yeah. I think that was huge in terms of setting an example. I think, when your young guys who are fresh are the ones who are kind of taking charge in terms of
Yeah.
effort, that is a huge problem. And, again, it may seem like it doesn't matter as much and, you want to lose games for draft lottery odds, but not this way. Like, this
Right.
is
If they lost
not
4-3
helpful.
or an
Hmm.
overtime loss, you'd say, okay, good effort. We get it. It's the slog of the season. But in this game, when you know that there's guys like Kyle Connor out there who I talked about yesterday, and you have to get up for a game like that. You have to. Otherwise, you're just going to look bad. In the end, now they just look bad.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the sloppy play is what led to too many penalties.
Oh,
The
yeah.
the Flyers took 5 penalties, including giving the Jets a 5-on-3.
Yep.
And, this penalty kill, which has been, admittedly much better, and we've talked about that on the show, when you give a team like the Jets chances, including extended 5-on-3 time, it's not going to hold.
No, and the Flyers' power play's worse than the league. Like you can't get any worse than that. You can only get better, and it seemingly got worse yesterday.
Oh, you talk about the effort, 5-on-5, it was bad, but on the power play, it was
Oh,
it was almost impossible to watch. Not getting set up, not even getting quality zone time. And it wasn't even like the Jets were getting shots on goal shorthanded a ton either. It was just that the Flyers couldn't get it together to put any constructive passes together or just anything.
yeah. I also think that for me, a big indictment of Mike Yeo is so when you pull the goalie and
Oh,
you
what
are
was that?
and you're hoping to get back in the game, why in the hell is Keith Yandel at the point? You know as well as I do, and everybody listening, that if the puck goes anywhere near Keith Yandel and happens to hop over his stick, it's game over. Like, you know that, and yet you still did it. It's like, I don't know, it's like Groundhog Day. It really is. It's unbelievable, some of the same mistakes that they'll make over and over again between the coaches and the players. It's mind-numbing.
It really is. I had to think in that scenario, you're down 3-0. What are we pulling the goalie for in the first place? But
Right. I mean, that's a fair point in and of itself.
if you're going to do it, your point stands in terms of putting Keith Yandel out there. My theory was that they just wanted to give him ice time because they figure he may not get a deal next season, and they're just giving him ice time to enjoy the last couple days of a potential career end. But
Right.
who knows? Who knows?
I mean, at this point, what is the cost of all this? There's a great cost of all this. And Chuck Fletcher is the one that's responsible because, again, you brought the guy in here. You gave him the no move. And look, I voted for him for the Masterton, so I don't want people to think that I didn't appreciate his career. But you have to look at it strictly from a business and development standpoint. And to continually give him this ice time that is not deserved, because if you want to say people have to earn their ice time on the Flyers, it's simply not true. And he's the exact proof of it.
Yeah, I think the accountability element is a huge part of this. And we talked a little bit in our mailbag this week about, what we're expecting to hear from Chuck Fletcher. And I expect to hear platitudes about accountability a lot. And
Yeah.
I think it depends on how he talks about it, but I think accountability has been a huge issue this season, and nobody being the one to stand up and say this is on me.
I mean, is the highlight of the season? Is the highlight of the season going to be a guy who just came through for a year and got the consecutive games played streak? And is this really going to be the highlight of the year in a positive way? Obviously, Giroux would be in a negative way. But is this the positive highlight of the year? Like, is that it?
I don't know. I mean, I want to talk about at least something positive about this game. I think Felix Sandstrom had a rough start, but he got it together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, much of what was going on later in the game for him was, on him entirely. I think there were defensive breakdowns.
Yeah, the first goal was on him. That's the one that was on him.
Yeah. But I feel like he did get it together. And so I've been generally pleased with Felix Sandstrom's play at the NHL level this late in the season, especially given the effort that's in front of him on a nightly basis. I think that, he and Jones have been doing the Lord's work, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, like, with the exception of the last 2 weeks where Jones has played his best hockey, most games he was giving up 3 goals. So if you're going to tell me that you could give me a reason why you should spend money on a backup, you better tell me that backup's only giving up 2 goals a game, because if the standard's 3, Sandstrom can do that every game too. Like, he can. He's at that level where he's going to give up 3 or less. And that's, at this point, that's probably acceptable. It's the way I feel.
Yeah, and Comrie did have a great game in net at the other
end. He did,
too.
But he's not a superstar goalie. Like, no. Mike Comrie, I said Eric Comrie. Mike is that other player who played for Edmonton, but back in the day. But yeah, Eric's a pretty good player. Like, I feel bad because he actually came up through the ranks with Thatcher Demko, and they were like neck and neck, and they played on some teams together, and Demko sort of edged him out, and unfortunately Demko really left him in the dust. So I was happy for Comrie on that level because I got to know about him personally through the Demko family. Like, they're the ones who told me. And so it was good. It was nice that he got that shutout, but he was handed that shutout.
He was. But yeah, well, we're done with road games. We've got one more home game. We're going to talk more about that one tomorrow. But as a result of all of the action around the NHL, including last night's Flyers game, we have some updated draft lottery odds. We have updated playoff scenarios, and we're going to talk about all of that coming up next.
Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed, durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' Insane Protection Program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try. If you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays exclusively for our listeners. Head to shadyrays.com. Use the code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. I didn't give them a review, but I would give them 10 stars because I'm really hard on sunglasses, and they've been great for me.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. It's nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from all our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So, Russ, we would normally do our Flyers fun thing at the end of every episode, but I wanted to bring this one up into our second segment today just because I got so much joy out of it. And it leads to our discussion about the draft lottery. And that was Steve Kornacki appearing on the NBC Sports Philly show, kind of doing his usual board with math and different scenarios for the Flyers.
Same clothes, wearing the same clothes.
Wearing the khakis, looking good, and I find Steve
Kornacki nerdy good. Let's not get crazy here. It's not like Maxim good. It's nerdy good, right?
It's nerdy good. It's absolutely nerdy good, and he, did his thing, and I appreciate his style from MSNBC and election coverage, and
he's a sports fan. You could tell he's a sports fan.
Absolutely. So it was good to see him kind of break down the Flyers draft lottery odds and all the different scenarios. And so I highly recommend you watch that if you haven't already. There's a link to it in the show notes for you.
It'll make you smile.
It absolutely will. So we got an update after what he reported in terms of the exact percentages, obviously, because there were games that happened last night. Seattle, man, not helping us out. They had a 2-0 lead, and then
Did you expect Dave Hackstall to help you with anything?
No, honestly? Of course not. But to have a 2-0 lead and then lose to LA 5-3 was not helpful for the Flyers.
No, worst case scenario. But again, you really can't live and die with all of these games when honestly, it's about luck of the ping pong ball and math, right? So as much luck as it takes to figure out what pick you're getting, you want the sure thing to be when your team actually makes the selection.
Exactly. So we have until May 10th to be nervous about those ping pong balls. Right now, the Flyers have 1 game left against the Senators. The Kraken have 2 left. So right now, the Flyers are going to finish with either the 3rd, the 4th, or the 5th worst record. We already have that tiebreaker with the Devils because New Jersey has more regulation wins than the Flyers. So there's no way for New Jersey to leapfrog the Flyers. So it's really between Seattle and Philadelphia right now in terms of who's going to have the 3rd or the 4th. I mean, I guess it is possible to get the 5th, but I think much less likely.
Like we're putting a positive spin on futility here.
Exactly. But we do have, slightly less than 10% chance of getting that first overall pick and the second overall pick. But if you look at the percentages, like Kornacki was talking about, it's most likely that the Flyers will end up with the fifth pick overall. And even though they might end up with the fourth worst record, and his explanation about it was great, that if you add up all the percentages of the teams that are better than the Flyers, aka worse on the lottery list, that percentage of them, any one of those teams getting the first and or second pick overall, is greater than the Flyers' chance. So that's how the math works out, that it's likely that one of those teams, at least, that's lower than the Flyers on the list is going to move up, and that'll bump the Flyers down. So I think, they'll probably end up with the fifth pick as it stands, but there's an outside chance that they'll get the first or second pick, and then there's an outside chance that two teams will leapfrog the Flyers and they'll get bumped down an extra slot.
Trust me, every time the league has made a tweak to this draft lottery, they have consulted mathematicians.
Oh, of course. And I like math. I like spreadsheets and I like formulas. So this is just right up my alley.
I don't, but I like the draft lottery.
Yeah. And we have the new rule this year, obviously, that you can't move up more than 10 spots.
Right.
And, you can't do it more years in a row. So there's all these extra factors that will be taken into account when I don't even know if it's ping pong balls anymore or just an algorithm, but
that's true. I would like to think it's still ping pong balls.
Yes, they were more fun.
They are more fun than an algorithm. All right, whatever.
Yeah. All right. So we also have some updates on the playoffs, and I think, aside from the Flyers Jets game, for us, the most important games on the schedule were that of the Dallas Stars and the Vegas Golden Knights. And the collective will of the NHL fandom to get Vegas eliminated from the playoffs was absolutely astounding to me.
Yeah, here's my feeling on it. Like I thought Vegas would make the playoffs this year. I even thought a week ago they could still edge it out, but I'm not going to dump on Jack Eichel. It's not his fault.
No.
He makes $10 million. Is that $10 million what's ripped apart the team? Absolutely. And it's going to wreak havoc on him next year. But it's not the player's fault. And everybody's looking for these things to blame Jack Eichel for. The Buffalo media still seems to be on a sort of a witch hunt against Jack Eichel. I don't have anything against Jack Eichel.
No, I think you're right. It was a collective problem by the strategies that Vegas has been using in terms of managing their cap and what their personnel looks like. And I think that, especially for a team that came out of the gate in expansion, obviously to make the Stanley Cup final, and this is their first year out of the playoffs for the franchise. It's a humbling experience for their fan base that all of us should go through, and it's just their time right now.
Yeah, but I'm going to tell you, Vegas fans, it might not get better. You don't have a lot in the farm system. The window's closing quickly, and you may still end up with a star player like Jack Eichel being on a non-playoff team for a few years. It's possible. So, again, Vegas tried to, buck the system and do it the opposite. GMs helped them with the way they did the expansion draft. But in the end, they didn't reach the goal. They didn't win the cup, and things could start to go backwards for them.
Yeah, we shall see. It was, of course, fascinating how it went down in terms of, the Stars needing to win or Vegas needing to lose, and they both made it difficult on themselves going to overtime.
Yeah, the Stars didn't give anybody any reason to say they're going to win a playoff series.
That is true. Right now, though, we still don't have a bracket, and we won't until the final games of the season. We only have two series locked in right now, Oilers versus Kings and Wild versus Blues. And even in Wild versus Blues, we don't know who's got home ice yet.
Right, which is crazy. But in a way, I like this. I do, because we're in such a betting world now. I like things that are undetermined as long as they can be, so odds can't be set. Don't ask me why. This is just the way my brain's working now, but I'm okay with this whole thing.
No, I love it too that, we won't know a lot of things about the playoffs until that last game of the season. Right now in the East, Tampa Bay versus Leafs can get locked in tonight with any Lightning win or a 1 point loss from the Bruins. So we could get some more information in tonight's matchups. But again, not knowing anything into the last game of the season is so much fun to me.
It is, but to be honest, I'll have hockey on a secondary screen. I'll be watching the NFL draft tonight because my New York Jets had 2 picks in the top 10. And since we're talking about, it's like I'm a draft guy. Like I have to watch some of that at least up until the 10th pick. So I'll have one eye on it.
Well, you did talk about how this affects the betting odds going into the playoffs in the NHL. And the perfect place to make those bets once we have those odds is betonline.net. It's your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. You can find all the latest sports development, league reviews, news, including this year's basketball playoffs, NHL playoffs, and the start of Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to the playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Russ, I am excited about this week's prospect profile. We've got another draft eligible prospect to talk about in Ryan Chesley. He is a right-handed defenseman. He's a little bit bigger, 6 feet tall. And right now he's projected late first round to like early mid second round in the ranking. So I definitely want to talk about why you wanted to talk about him specifically, given where the Flyers are picking. But this season, he is on the U.S. National Team Development Program. He's on the U18 team right now that's playing in Worlds. He's got 27 points in 56 games played for that U18 team. And right now he's got a goal and 3 assists in the tournament for Team USA. He's tied for second in scoring for defensemen and is a +9. So he's having a pretty decent tournament so far.
And that's why we're talking about him, because he's going to move up the charts. He's moving up on mine. And so even if the Flyers don't want him with the 5th pick, which is understandable, if they were to trade down and let's say they traded down into the 18 to 25 range, Chesley's going to be in that range. And so the interesting thing is this. We're in a world now where the excellent two-way defenseman who has a little size and a right-handed shot has become almost like a sweet spot in the draft, right? Like, hey, this guy's going to go to Minnesota. He's definitely playing in the NHL. Get it. Totally get it. I think that too. But the argument is, do you go with that or do you go with, hey, I want somebody who's a little more dynamic offensively because it gives you that little bit of something that my organization doesn't have. That's what the debate will be. The Flyers have gone very safe last few drafts, so for the most part. And so I would say Chesley is a guy that will be high on their board. He skates well. He's really smart. He's also gets some of his goals from going in deep like a forward. So he knows when to do that. He's sturdy out there. I wouldn't say he's overly physical, but he doesn't shy away from it. He's got a good shot. He is capable of getting some goals. He plays. His gap control is good. He's one of those guys that is very engaged on every shift. So there's nothing not to like about him. I personally don't think he's the best guy even on his team, as far as not the U18 team, but on the national development team. But I recognize that he has been sneaking up the charts for months now, and he's been, going up my rankings too. And then in this tournament looks particularly great. And there is always going to be a recency bias. Like that's a thing in life. And I think he's going to benefit from that, Rachel.
I think so too. And obviously, he'll probably show up at the combine. And so, what he does there is going to be added
Yep.
to what he has done late in the season here. And you mentioned he is going to University of Minnesota this fall. I am actually, the more we've been talking about these draft eligible prospects, I'm very excited for this Minnesota team
Oh yeah.
next fall, because not only Ryan Chesley is committed there, but we've talked about Logan Cooley. And somebody we haven't talked about is Cruz Lucius,
Yeah.
who's the brother of Chaz Lucius, who was in last year's draft, who I personally, as longtime listeners of the show will know, was very interested in.
Yeah, I like Chaz.
He actually just signed with the Jets yesterday.
Oh, good for him.
So
Great-
very
great
excited
kid.
for him. Very
Great kid.
excited for him. But I think that, Minnesota's putting together an excellent freshman class
They
for
really
next
are.
fall, and Ryan's going to be a huge part of that. And I think that, what you said about him matches up mostly with, what I've seen in terms of people writing about him. In terms of his shot, I've seen some people sort of ding his accuracy, that he really needs to work more on shot selection and just being smarter about that. Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, I don't know if I've noticed that, to be honest. So I'm not going to say one way or the other because it's not something that I've noticed. I've seen him probably 3 or 4 times live in the last 2 years, plus a lot on video. I haven't really noticed that. So if that's the case, it's the case with a lot of guys. That's the case with Cam York, right?
Right.
So that's a pretty common thing. So if it is, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's not going to hold him back.
No, and I think the college game will help him on that front,
Yes.
because college, as we know, has, very specific systems in place, and especially a team like Minnesota, they're going to lock him into making certain choices in a sense.
He's going to have to think quick.
Yeah, he's going to have to learn,
Which will
learn to
help
think
that.
better. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so I think the fact that he is going to a program like Minnesota is going to help him tremendously in cleaning up the smaller things about his game. And, again, I do, while a high pick, and again, we're waiting until the draft lottery to make these final kind of decisions or predictions in terms of what we would want for the Flyers, but the trading down option seems very appealing to me right now. And Ryan Chesley is somebody that would definitely be on my list if the Flyers do that.
Excuse me. Yeah, I just look at it like, if there are some teams out there that have multiple seconds and they get stuck on a player and they call me and they say, we want that player. If it's not a player I want or was going to select with my next pick, I'm okay with moving down too. I mean, when you're talking about it in theory, it matters who's on the board. Like, if you're telling me, again, like we go back to the Cole Caulfield situation, I wouldn't have done that, right? But they did, and we'll see how it works out. But in theory, I definitely would do it, because it's right now, it could only benefit the Flyers, because not having a second is going to hurt them in this draft, because there's a lot of guys, and especially what their second would have been, there's a lot of guys in that early 30s that are really good players. And I don't think Chesney's one of them anymore, but there's going to be some really good ones, and they're not going to even get a sniff on those guys.
Exactly.
Currently. Yeah.
Well, we have more chances to see Ryan play in the U18 Worlds. They're continuing starting today in the quarterfinals. And you'll get to see him. You'll get to see Isaac Howard, who we talked about recently, who's the Team USA's leader in points right now.
Had a 4-goal game. Not bad.
Yep. Not terrible at all. So we'll keep an eye on them. And we will be back tomorrow, where we are going to talk about the Flyers' last game versus the Ottawa Senators. We're going to get into our Flyers awards predictions. And of course, it's Friday, so we're going to talk about Gritty. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you, so send us your mailbag questions via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers, or you can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
You made us your first listen today. Now make your next listen Locked On NHL. They've got all the latest news and playoff updates from around the league. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.